Okay, so now let's talk about the second characteristic. So this one's going to be a little bit longer discussion. So this is on divide and conquer. Here's a quote from pages 131 to 132 that discusses this. Quote, "As the oppressor minority subordinates and dominates the majority, it must divide it and keep it divided in order to remain in power. The minority cannot permit itself the luxury of tolerating the unification of the people, which would undoubtedly signify a serious threat to their own hegemony. Accordingly, the minority cannot permit itself the luxury of tolerating the unification of the people, which would undoubtedly signify a serious threat to their own hegemony. Accordingly, the oppressors halt by any method, including violence, any action which in even incipient fashion could awaken the oppressed to the need for unity. Concepts such as unity, organization, and struggle are immediately labeled as dangerous. In fact, of course, these concepts are dangerous to the oppressors, for the realization is necessary to actions of liberation." End quote. So this particular section on dividing and conquering, again, this book was written in 1970, so 50 years ago, 50 years ago. This conversation is very relevant with what's going on right now in Black Lives Matter in 2020, as well as politics, as well as just how people are communicating with each other across these social divides that have widened over the last few years or even decades. One of the things that Freire notes as a tactic for dividing and conquering is that the oppressors further divide and conquering by distributing benefits and penalties that seek to preserve the current power structure. So as an example of what's going on with Black Lives Matter, some people are quoting and promoting a small number of black conservatives who condemn protests that turn violent while vilifying a person who peacefully takes a knee. So in other words, we are providing benefits to people who are saying violence is wrong, but we are penalizing people who are peacefully protesting the same topic. This, according to Freire, is a form of oppression and maintaining power and control over a group of individuals. Here's a quote from page 135. Quote, "Dividing in order to preserve the status quo, then, is necessarily a fundamental objective of the theory of anti-dialogical action. In addition, the dominators try to present themselves as saviors of the women and men they dehumanize and divide. This messianism, however, cannot conceal their true intention, to save themselves. They must save their riches, their power, their way of life, the things that enable them to subjugate others." End quote. From page 135. So another approach of oppressors is to divide while making it appear as though they are actually defending the oppressed. Now, as a contemporary example in 2020, politicians in recent years have been saying for quite some time now that they're here for the people and they want to help the oppressed. But then they end up passing laws that favor corporations and business owners over the individuals that they said they were going to protect. Now, one way that we as educators might be able to look at divide and conquer in relation to the classroom setting is think about how kids are divided and conquered, whether it be by grade level, whether it be between grade levels in terms of having several different classes for, let's say, third grade, or even within specific classes by dividing by the, quote, gifted, talented, or the kids who need more support. Although it allows us to work one-on-one with people, this is also still a form of dividing and conquering and othering of people. Yes, it provides support and services, but there are many ways of learning that involve learning across grade levels in terms of vertical learning, in terms of also learning across different levels of expertise and learning from each other. So the so-called gifted and talented kids can work alongside the kids who need extra support. So we don't necessarily have to divide and conquer. So Freire might argue that instead of having grade levels, instead of having these different groups, why don't we work across experiences, across grades, across ages, etc. Having worked in settings like that, it works really well. But I also understand that this approach goes against what many people might be thinking right now of, yeah, but if I have all of the kids who are struggling on a topic in the same group, it's easier for me to work with them on that topic. Or if I have all the kids who are excelling in a topic on something, it's easier for me to work with them on that. My response to that might be, it's only easier if we are teaching to the average or to the mean, rather than teaching individuals and working alongside individuals. So that's my polite counterpoint. to say that it is still a form of dividing and conquering if we are dividing up groups by abilities, ages, experience, etc. And I say that with love to everyone. I, too, am guilty of oppressing people, constantly reflecting on it, trying to work on it. So, not trying to point fingers or anything like that. Especially because this form of dividing and conquering is usually outside of the control of teachers. So, while I did not enjoy grade levels, the structure of the districts that I've worked in, at most, had 3 grade levels combined. That was a rare exception. Most of the classes were single grade level, by experience, etc. And that was out of my control as a single teacher. That would be more in the control of administration, superintendents, etc. This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast is from episode number 56, which is titled Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Chapter 4. You can listen to the full episode and hundreds more by searching for the CSK8 podcast on your favorite podcast app or by going to jaredoleary.com.